Welcome to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. I'm Jay Warmke.
And I'm Annie Warmke.
That you are. And today we're going to talk about solar pollution, or it's better, but it's not perfect.
You always say that when I raise the concerns.
I know.
It's like,
and we're not talking about pollution from the sun. We're talking about pollution and the negative side of converting everything over to solar electricity. So there's always a cost involved, and I will continue to argue that it's better, but it's not perfect. And you, Annie, will continue to argue that there are externalized costs that we do not pay for, basically.
Yeah, we don't factor in. But what I will say is that, just so you know where I'm coming from, as if you didn't, is that the best solutions are to use nothing, to use no energy that you have to consume, so that you have thermal mass, so you're able to keep your building as warm or as cool as it needs to be.
Right. And
all the other cool stuff that you can do that changes everything.
Yeah, they refer to that like the negawatts, the negawatts. The best energy is the energy you don't use.
That's right. So you said it more succinctly than me, but that's what I believe, and that's part of our philosophy.
And what's interesting, I just saw a nice TED Talk by Bill Gates, and if you get a chance, look it up on YouTube or whatever. But he was talking about that because of the severity of global warming, we have to get our carbon emissions to zero. It's not a matter of let's reduce them. It's a matter of it has to get to zero. And how do we do that? Well,
but wait. So you're going to really talk about corporations today and not us individuals.
No.
Because it's not about us individuals.
Yeah. There's a whole, we all contributed to getting ourselves into this mess. We all have to contribute to getting ourselves out of it. But solar is just one aspect of it, and it is not a perfect solution. So that's kind of what we're focusing. We're not worrying about how to solve, all the planet's problems, because that will take us 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And we just don't have time for that. So anyway.
Well, I just don't like the whole thing of if we just fix the drippy faucet, all will be well. It isn't about me.
Right.
It really is about how the corporations are extracting things from the earth and how they're using them and how they're selling them and all that stuff.
So we're better off. Solar is a better solution. We're in the early days of solar at the moment. I always like to say we're in the floppy disk age of solar.
Yeah, but what's a floppy disk?
Yeah, well, okay, that proves
you are really dating yourself.
So, but right now, solar accounts for about 2% of the United States energy usage.
And how many numbers is that really? 2%.
2%. It's. I don't want to get too much in the detail, and it's not because I don't know.
But I think it's important to say there are, 100,000 people or a million people.
The point that I'm saying is that 2% of our electricity is currently being met. We're probably going to get in the next couple of decades up to around 30%. So any of the problems that at the moment are very, very small are going to become very, very large as we proceed. As these things grow exponentially, we're going to have these issues. And the issues involved with solar, as I've identified them anyway, is there are pollution issues associated with the construction of solar panels and all of the electronics that are associated with a solar
and the racking system.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. So you have, for instance, the main ingredient in a solar panel is silica. It's mined from quartz. It's a sand. It's similar to what you find in glass, but there are problems in any extraction economy, in any mining economy. There are going to be problems in mining enough silica. And silica is very abundant. It's the second most common element in the Earth's surface, but it's still going to create a problem.
But I'm confused because I saw a film that said that that solar energy is really rooted, the beginning of it, the creation of it is from fossil fuel.
Well, yes and no. First off, obviously, you use fossil fuels in the mining. The mining equipment uses fossil fuels. Then the transportation of the materials to wherever they're going to be processed uses fossil fuels. Then when you take that silica, and there are some health issues associated with silica, like I think it's called silicosis,
with your
the
lungs.
dust, you can hurt the miners. It also tends to be a very light dust, so it settles on trees and plants, and it pollutes the surrounding area of these mines. So, and there's of course all of the disruption to flora and fauna that's associated with any mining operation.
Where is this silica?
It's primarily the major source of silica is China. Second is Russia. But China's
they're our
far and
enemy,
away.
so we don't care.
No,
whatever.
They're all our friends, and we sing Kumbaya and hold hands. But anyway, the third source is Norway, which I found quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then the United States is next, is fourth.
Well, we're definitely expendable.
Wisconsin.
Those people.
Wisconsin is a big source of silica.
Wow.
And actually, there's a silica mine apparently near Chillicothe, Ohio. So it's available. It's widely available, but there are problems associated. Now, you were mentioning the amount of fossil fuels that are involved. Well, once you take this silica and you begin to refine it, it has to be melted. It has to be melted to a liquid to create these pure silica ingots, and that takes a huge amount of energy to do so. So how polluting that is really is determined by where that energy comes from. Obviously, if you're going to be burning coal to melt silica, it's more polluting than if you're using solar or if you're using even nuclear.
Well, but the carbon emission must be outrageous.
So you hear a lot of people will be saying, look at all the carbon that it takes to create a solar panel or whatever, to create all of these things. And it turns out there was a study by NREL, by the National Renewable Energy Labs, a few years ago, where they found that really all of the energy input, that's referred to as the return on energy investment. So the energy going in comes out of solar or is returned from solar over a period of 4 years. That's what they found. So a solar panel typically has a 25-year life. So it takes 4 years of production to get back to zero. The energy that was put into that to get it out. But these things continue to get more efficient. So,
meaning the panels
and the production processes. So in recent years, a new study has said that return on energy investment is only about 2 years. So really the myth that so much energy goes into the production of solar that it's not worth the energy that comes out, which is true when you talk about things like ethanol. There's more energy that goes into that than the energy that's produced. But with solar, it's only about 2 years. Still an issue, right? But not as bad as some of the other facilities. Certainly not as bad as a coal power plant.
So if we were to take into account the true cost to the environment, to people's health, etc., then what would the payback period be?
Well, they're saying 2 years on the energy, but you can.
But they're not counting that. They're not monetizing that.
They will, and they have in some instances because it costs them money to produce. So assuming you're not dealing with subsidized energy, that's all built into the cost of the panel production. And there are other issues, like for instance, when they treat the silicon, they use some materials such as silicon tetrachloride.
Well, that sounds nasty.
Yeah,
anything chloride.
And often that's a waste material. It's often recycled, but not always. There have been
a waste material
in the production of silicon ingots. So you can reuse it. But if you don't reuse it, if they dump it, which companies have been known, I know this is a shock, they have been known to behave badly. So if this chemical is thrown into the environment, when it reacts with water, it becomes hydrochloric acid.
Oh my God. So that's like lethal.
Well, the soil becomes completely acidified.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. There's another chemical that's an issue, nitrogen trifluoride. which is about 17,000 times as potent a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide.
Is that affiliated with aluminum production or something?
Well, it's affiliated with building solar panels. I'm not quite sure in what factor.
Yeah, because fluoride's a byproduct of aluminum process.
So yeah, that's an issue. And then there is another hydrofluoric acid, which they use to clean the silicon. And there was a big issue. I remember reading about this in China. It was in 2011, where there was a big spill of this, and it killed millions and millions of fish in the rivers and the livestock that drank. And I don't recall it being associated with solar, but apparently it was. So you have a big spill of these chemicals. And so, us greenies are not always as green as we like to pretend that we are. So,
well, we don't want to know the true cost of these things.
Yeah. So there are issues. There's also water that's used in the production, but not anywhere near as much water as you would find in, for instance, a coal power plant or a nuclear power plant. They use huge amounts of water.
Right. They have a lot of waste too.
Again, I'll keep reiterating, there is water. I mean, it is an issue. And when they're building these big solar arrays, so in the production, it's a problem. But then in the actual construction of a solar array,
like a normal array for residential or a commercial.
Well, a lot of times people think of solar as, let's put a few panels up on the roof or put a little solar array in the backyard. But really, most of the solar that's installed all over the world, I think it's like 70% of it here in the United States, is utility scale solar. So these are huge, acres of solar panels. And it's a large construction site. You have all of the issues associated with a construction site, such as, compaction of the earth, groundwater runoff when you start disrupting
pollution
the soil.
From equipment.
Yeah, equipment. You have a lot of water is used to mitigate dust that's kicked up while you're doing this construction. There's disruption of local plant life, local animal life. Sometimes
more than disruption, because then they'll die because they're there because there's room, and they go somewhere else where there isn't room for them.
Sure. And it's the same kind of disruption, again, that you might find if you built a shopping mall. Well,
I'm not for those either.
I know you're not, but I'm just trying to point out that this is a problem, but it is not unique to solar. But solar is not exempt from it either.
Right. Well, that's the part that I'm interested in, because I feel like we need to understand that we're paying a price.
Well, and one thing that I failed to mention in the mining, part of what solar is all about is not only the production of the solar panels and the electronics associated, but battery technology is becoming a big thing for this industry. And of course, the technology of the day is lithium-ion batteries. And the major producers of lithium are the three countries where most of lithium is housed is the ABCs, right? Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, in that order. So there are some significant problems, which I'll touch on in just a second. But first, I want to remind everyone that you are listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, reminding you it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
And thank God, especially today after hearing this.
Okay, well, okay, don't be sad. It gets better. All right. So, but first I need to talk about a coup d'etat in Bolivia.
I know. I've read all about it. It's really amazing.
It is amazing, but it's amazing to me that in 2019, the United States is still involved in overthrowing elected leaders in third world countries so that we can have access to a more agreeable government. So what happened in
agreeable meaning that they'll do what we want them to do, right, not that they like our policies.
Or do easily what the corporations want them to do.
Yes, same difference.
And so Bolivia elected or re-elected Evo Morales, who is president of Bolivia.
An indigenous native person.
That's right. Well,
one of their own.
I'm sure they can be corrupt as well if they
I'm
try
just
hard.
pointing out that would be a big deal.
Sure. And I don't want to paint him as a saint, but he was elected. And of course, the backers of the United States came in and said, this was a fraudulent election. He needs to be out. They ousted him. They put in a woman to replace him who is a far right.
She's European, isn't she?
Well, of European descent. And basically agreeable to whatever the United States and the corporate interests would like. Now, it has been reported subsequently that all of the arguments in favor of ousting him were manufactured. All of this was reported in the New York Times, but he's gone. And now it also just sort of happened that lithium mining, the contract was being awarded to the Chinese. We're in the middle of a power struggle between the United States and China.
Weren't the Germans? Didn't they have a contract too? But they backed out. Theirs was
canceled.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's a power play in there, and who knows what's behind it. But it is just another example that when an economy is based on extraction, the people of that nation usually suffer, and they're not in a position really to argue. The GDP, the gross domestic product of Bolivia, is about $40 billion. Compare that with Jeff Bezos of Amazon. His personal wealth is $175 billion. So he's basically 4 Bolivias just sitting there at his dinner table. So,
well, the thing I would say is that extraction economy, we understand this in this country because we have had it happen from the beginning of our history. And no matter the outcome, it's always bad. And yet we continue to do it. The people of Appalachia out west right now with the way they're extracting oil and fracking and, it's all really horrible.
Okay, so you're making my point. Solar isn't perfect, but it's better. Okay, so we're just a little less evil.
Okay. Who's we?
We, the solar industry.
Okay.
Okay, so these projects, in the construction of these projects, there's a lot of environmental disruption. Then comes
But don't you think disruption is such a strange choice of words because it's really destruction? When you talk about animals, insects, the soil.
Sometimes these things recover. So,
what are they doing to make that happen?
Well, and this is one of the nice things anyway about the solar industry is typically they're more aware of the damage that they're doing. And they do try and mitigate it because part of their brand is to be green. So you do have people, for instance, in large utility systems that are planting pollinators to try and revitalize some of the area that their panels have been, installed at. So it may not be back to how it was, but it is better than if you had, a fracking facility on
but
site.
I just want to say, I got to go to the other side. It's very self-serving to be, as you might say, green for them because the panels have to stay clean. They don't want people in there weed whacking and doing all kinds of things. So this is very self-serving. It isn't because you're green.
Well, it may be a combination. Not everybody is evil, There are people who are trying to do the right thing.
I don't know if evil is the right word either.
Within the constraints that they're trying to operate under. But when we do talk about pollution from solar, most people's minds go immediately to how do you deal with all of the solar trash when you get to the end of the life of a solar array?
Is there an end of the life for a solar array? I mean, currently,
ultimately,
they're saying 25 years is very conservative because they think it could last forever, really, unless it gets broken or damaged.
Some parts of it may, but let's just assume everything comes apart. Everything must be eventually dealt with. The cradle to cradle kind of mindset. And the industry is pretty new, really as a consumer industry, only about 10 years old. So as you say, these things are expected to live 25 years or more. So we haven't hit this moment yet. But to give you a sense of scale, The Japanese government did a study, and they found that they were having to get rid of about 10,000 tons of solar associated materials on an annual basis in 2016. They anticipate that will increase to about 800,000 tons by 2040. So there is a tremendous amount of waste there.
But it's not possible to repurpose or
well, now you're getting to
extract
solutions.
Things from it.
All right. Well,
that's where my brain always goes with stuff.
Let me just finish, though, that China is expecting to have about 20 million metric tons of waste by 2040. So it is large. And those numbers can be deceiving because that might be the same amount of waste as is associated with disposing cell phones, for all I know.
It says 90%. Cell phone.
Well, yeah. But she's looking at my notes here. No, I know all this stuff off the top of my head. So anyway, yeah, the issue there, for instance, is if you dispose of a solar panel, then if that panel is not properly dealt with, then lead and cadmium will leach into the environment just from rainwater. So that's one issue. A lot of the material in there is glass, but that glass is impure, so it can't easily be recycled. So when we talk about recycling, these materials are not easily recycled using today's technology. Now, 15 years from now, who knows? A lot of energy and effort has to be put into the recycling of these products.
Well, if there's a war with Bolivia, Argentina, or Chile, and there's no lithium, they could get really excited about extracting things.
But as long as Wisconsin is with us, we've got silica, you know.
No, but we need lithium.
Okay, well, that's for the battery issues. So,
well, we're moving more in that direction. So
one of the things that I found interesting is you'll see a lot of times people, and the industry likes to tout this, all of these electronic devices, because solar is not just solar panels, as you say, lithium with batteries.
Well, for cars, I mean, we're moving full speed ahead.
But the electronics that are associated, the microinverters, the inverters, the power optimizers, things like this, a lot of these companies say we are recycling these electronics. So there's a huge industry that's associated with the recycling of electronic components. But a study by the United Nations found that actually about 60 to 90% of these recycled electronics were actually being sold to third world nations to be dumped illegally, because nobody wants the old crap. You know, I mean, nobody wants these products once they've gone through their life. And it's worse for mobile phones. They were saying about 90% of mobile phones are just dumped in landfills.
Well, the real issue here is that it's not, they say recycling. Recycling means you're somehow taking it apart and extracting things. You know, it's not about repairing it or repurposing it. And so it's all just a bunch of baloney. I mean, that they're not doing it.
Well, that's a well-reasoned argument.
Well, I mean, it's just the truth, because there are things in there that are valuable that could be reused.
They could be. There's a lot of silver. There's lead in the solders. There's copper.
Think of what that's doing to the environment.
But it is more difficult under current economic conditions to try and extract it out of those pieces of equipment than it is just to start from scratch and use raw materials. And that's what it always comes down to. And as you say, we externalize some of these costs. So what we have to do is build into the cost of these materials,
cradle to grave,
or cradle to cradle.
They have to be.
So what we're finding, for instance, as an example, one of the solutions has succeeded very well in lead acid batteries. When you buy a battery, you pay what's referred to as a core charge. So if I go out and buy a battery and it costs me $59 or whatever, I have to pay maybe $5 as a core charge. It's like a deposit on a soft drink bottle. When I bring that back, I get that $5 back. So as a result, about 98% of all lead acid batteries are completely recycled. So that's a big success story. So the same thing has to take place in things like microinverters and things like solar panels, but that's going to add to the cost of the system. Well, those costs already exist, as you like to point out, but we externalize them.
That's right.
We externalize them.
Or pretend they're not there.
Right. So that's one of the solutions. Another solution would be to hold people accountable. Right.
Well, that is never going to happen in this country. Maybe in France or someplace like that.
I was joking.
Okay. No. You looked serious.
No. We're very bad at holding corporations accountable.
We'd like to, but they're in charge of everything. Sure. So it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
So the government, and this is going to be a growing issue, they have to monitor and enforce the e-waste stream. E-waste, basically the electronic waste stream, because it's not just solar, it's everything in our world is becoming electronic. So that's because phones, we think technology is the solution for everything. It can be.
It's a cultural thing.
So, and of course, the solution that we always come back to is use less, right?
Yeah.
That's the best. Now with solar, there is a movement towards using less materials in the construction of the panels and the components themselves. So you're finding that the solar panels are getting down to where they're about 2 atoms thick. So there's not that much material that's part of it. You're getting less aluminum, less glass involved.
Aren't they doing things like creating inverters and stuff that would handle 2 panels instead of 1?
Sure, yeah, multiple. So you're only using half as many things.
See, I know my stuff. I've been editing a book on solar energy.
And when you go to higher voltages, you use less wires, so that's less copper. So all of these things are economically pleasing, because they save money when you use less materials, and they're environmentally pleasing because we're saving on the materials that have to be disposed of and the like. And another thing that you find with technology is actually as the technology improves, everything gets better as far as the efficiency of production, the using less materials, and therefore generating less that goes into the waste stream. So we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully before it becomes a big problem, we'll have solved it. But when I say that, I think of things like everything else in our society.
Yeah, everything has to make a shift.
Which never actually, like ever since I was a kid, they said, well, we'll fix Social Security and things like that. And it always seems to get pushed off.
But I think the middle of this country, not the geographic middle, but the middle. There is no middle class, but there is a middle somewhere. And I think that when you look at marketing surveys and studies and things, you'll see that people are demanding more of this, the people who are spending big bucks.
All right. Well, go out and demand it. And we want to just close by saying you've been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke. We want to thank our award-winning and sustainable producer, Adam Rich. And we want to thank you for spending just a little bit of time with us. And as your grandmother hopefully told you, the secret to a happy and sustainable life is...
play nice with others, clean up your own mess, and eat those veggies, Jay.
Till next time.
And her children will be see the morning glory blossom in the night. Know the stars are dancing in the twilight. Soon we'll be together, all will be revealed. Mother Earth will sing and her children will be
You can find more information on living sustainably in our unsustainable world at bluerockstation.com.